Cathie Wood, fundadora da ARK Invest, uma grande gestora de investimentos, acredita que o Bitcoin atingirá a marca de $1 milhão em 2030.
I'm assuming, Cathie, that you're going to hold to your Bitcoin forecast for, $1 million per coin by 2030. That still feels good to you?
Yes, and you can, sometimes you need to battle test. You need to go through crises to see who the real, to see the survivors, first of all, but really to battle test the infrastructure and the thesis. And again, we think Bitcoin is coming out of this smelling like a rose because of what I have mentioned previously. And I do think the one thing that will be delayed is perhaps institutions stepping back and just saying, okay, do we really understand this? And once they actually do the homework and see what's happened here, I think they might be more comfortable moving into Bitcoin and perhaps Ether as a first stop. Because they'll understand it more.
E como podemos observar, o preço do Bitcoin está hoje em suas mínimas. O número de endereços rodando Bitcoin está em suas máximas. O número de nós do BTC em suas máximas históricas. O hash rate do Bitcoin perto das máximas. O balanço de Ethereum em exchanges na mínima de 4 anos. Complementando essa visão bullish, Tudor Jones II, CEO da Tudor Investment Corporation, uma empresa de fundos de hedge, afirma que mesmo com os preços baixos, o valor intrínseco do Bitcoin e do Ethereum só tendem a crescer.
You think about every decade. The 70s were the decade of inflation. The 80s was a decade of kind of boom-bust, huge swings in dollar volatility. The 90s was equitization, the dot-com bubble. The aughts was the mortgage bubble and the great financial crisis. The teens were the peak of globalization and probably the peak of central bank experimentation with monetary policy, right? The 20s, I'm afraid, are going to be that period where we really focus on debt dynamics country by country, fiscal deficits, and the need to run certainly fiscal policy in a way that gives people confidence in the long-run value of the currency. And the problem that we've had really for the last 12 years is that we've done this massive experimentation with monetary policy where we suppressed yields, and we did this massive experimentation on the fiscal side during the pandemic. And so my guess is the 20s are going to be just the opposite of both. We're already seeing that right now from the central bank. Whoever is the president in 24 is going to be dealing with debt dynamics that are so dire. And so
dire that this is the 1970s?
No, so dire that we're going to have fiscal retrenchment. And that fiscal retrenchment means that if we don't have fiscal retrenchment, that everything that we spent, if you think about the teens, which was all about suppressing yields, right? Mm-hmm. I think the 20s will be just the opposite. I mean, higher term premiums in bond markets, higher term premiums in stock markets. They'll be just the opposite of what we experienced the last decade. So in a time when there's too much money, which is why we have inflation, and too much fiscal spending, something like crypto, specifically Bitcoin and Ethereum, where there's a finite amount of that will have value at some point, someday. I don't know when that will be, but it will have value. That scarcity.
And the value at a much higher number than where we are today.
Oh, I think so, yeah.
E dos airdrops mais aguardados pela comunidade do XRP, da Flare Network, acontecerá hoje após 2 anos de espera. Flare é um blockchain EVM de camada 1 que possui 2 protocolos principais, State Connector e Flare Time Series Oracle, FTSO. Esses protocolos permitem que os desenvolvedores criem um ecossistema de aplicativos de interoperabilidade robustos e descentralizados. E outro airdrop que acontecerá para holders de XRP é o da Coreum. Um dos diferenciais descritos pela Coreum são as EGBs. Enterprise Graded Blockchains, EGB, é o novo padrão introduzido pela Coreum para redes blockchain especificamente projetadas para fornecer as ferramentas e infraestrutura essenciais para empresas de qualquer tamanho, para construir e executar aplicativos descentralizados, em conformidade com o ISO 20022, olha ele aí de novo. Alguns elementos-chave que as redes RGB trazem são segurança, escalabilidade, interoperabilidade, eficiência e compatibilidade com os requisitos regulamentares. O Snapshot acontecerá dia 24 de março, junto com o lançamento da mainnet, e a distribuição dia 15 de maio. Eu vou deixar o link das instruções na descrição. Tá em inglês, então dá teu jeito aí.
E por hoje é isso, pessoal. Deixa o like, se inscreve, comenta, compartilha e a gente se vê no próximo. Valeu!
だがなおとはたとえどんなことがあっても自分が軌道掲示基盤であると名乗ることはできないのだ。